Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Strawberry Rhino, and in today's video I have a full review for you of the AAT60, which is the latest premium tank to enter World of Tanks console. This is a premium tier 9 tank destroyer, and in today's video we're going to go over to Excel and have a look at the stats of this vehicle compared to 3 other premium tier 9 vehicles to see how the AAT60 holds up. We're going to have a look at my commander and equipment setup and how that affects the base stats of the AAT60. Then we're going to have a look at the armor, as there is some useful armor on the AAT60, especially on the turret. And then we are going to look at the 3 gameplays that finish this video to demonstrate how this tank performs on the battlefield. But this is the article that World of Tanks console have put up on the AAT60. We're going to have a look at the vehicle itself and the price, and yeah, see what Wargaming are saying about the AAT60. So it existed only in blueprints. It was a key step in the development of American armor, and it had basically a turret compartment that could only fit the commander in, which, as we'll have a look at the pictures now, show you why. This turret is very narrow from the front, very good on a ridgeline. You can see that the only thing that protrudes is the turret ring, where it's kind of got these cutout parts here on the sides of the turret. So from the side, quite a nice sort of side of the tank to shoot a large side profile, but from the front, and with some nice frontal turret armor and some pretty decent upper hull armor as well, this thing can be very good on a ridge line, and you can also side scrape a little bit with this vehicle if you watch out for a couple of weak spots, which I'll talk to you about in just a little bit. But yeah, sort of standard looking sloped back upper hull, quite a large lower plate, and a narrow turret from the front with some nice turret armor. So when can you get this vehicle and how much is it? So you can get this vehicle from today, the 4th of July. So happy 4th of July to everyone watching from the United States. And you can get it until the 1st of August. And how much is the vehicle? Well, you can get it in 3 bundles as usual. The ultimate bundle, which is 15,200 gold, the loaded, which is 13,800 gold, and the base bundle, which is just the tank by itself, 11,500 gold. So it's a very expensive vehicle, and it's a reasonable price if you really like the playstyle, but you've got to make sure this tank is the one for you, because it doesn't have the best penetration. It might not be the best kind of tank for maybe a really new player to play, but as we'll discuss throughout this video, I think it's a very strong tank, and if you can get used to the playstyle, that price will be worth it, because it's one of those tanks that you want to take out because it has such good features, which I'll go on to talk about next when we look at the stats of this vehicle. So we're going to head over to Excel. Here are the stats of the AAT60 on the left, and on the right we have the stats of the Kunstpanzer and the Kampfpanzer 50T, 2 premium tier 9 German medium tanks, and then on the right we have the 4-shot autoloader in the TL7 Black, which is our counterpart American premium tier 9 tank destroyer with that 4-shot 120mm autoloader. And yeah, we're going to compare the stats of these vehicles and see who comes out on top. If you don't know the colour coding or haven't seen my reviews, green is the best, red is the worst, and orange is somewhere in between. And the ones highlighted in yellow are updated with my commander and equipment setup applied to the base stats to show you how that improves this vehicle. So as a premium tank, the AAT60, you would expect, maybe if you're a newer player, to have a silver bonus or a commander bonus, but it only has a 5% tank XP. It has nothing special like the TL7 Black, which has a 25% silver bonus and a 75% XP bonus, so don't expect to be getting anything extra from this vehicle. It's one of those sort of collector's tanks that you play because you enjoy the vehicle itself. So that's it for any bonuses you might get with the AAT60. We're now going to get stuck into the raw stats of this vehicle. So a premium tier 9 tank destroyer, you have 1650 hit points, which is much better than the other tank destroyer in this comparison, the TL7 Black. You do have 50 more than the Kunze-Panzer, but you have 100 less than the Kampfpanzer 50T, which is the medium tank. However, this isn't the end of the world, and you have a little bit of armour as well, which is quite useful on your turret, and I found that to be more than enough with this vehicle to keep you in the battle. In terms of your view range, 380 meters view range, which is not as good as the Kampfpanzer or the Kunze-Panzer, which have 390 and 400 meters view range respectively, but you do have 10 meters over the TL7 Black, and because this tank has mediocre view range combined with fantastic concealment, you have a great ability to outspot your opponent. So that still concealment rating itself is 345 meters, which is the worst in this comparison, but all four of these tanks have very, very good concealment ratings, and it depends on whether you choose to invest in them to get them down to a level other the tanks you might want to invest in other stats to improve that. But with the AAT60, I found that I could invest heavily in the concealment of this tank, which has dropped my still concealment rating down. You can see with a good setup to 258 meters, which means that in conjunction with the view range that I have with my setup 486 meters, I can outspot many other tanks, even other pretty sneaky base stats of tanks, but they haven't got a good commander in them, so I'm able to outspot them that way. So it's not the end of the world. You do have what it says the worst still concealment in this list here in Excel. However, it is still a pretty decent still concealment rating, and you can get it down to a very nice level indeed. But the best in this comparison is the Kunze-Panzer at 326 meters, a very sneaky tank indeed. Next, we're going to go on to the mobility of all of these vehicles. So the AAT60 has an 800 horsepower engine with an 18.6 power to weight. You can go 67 kilometers an hour forwards, 24 kilometers an hour in reverse, hold reverse of 34 degrees a second, and a turret reverse of 26 degrees a second. So yeah, pretty good news for this vehicle. As a tank destroyer, you would not normally expect a tank that has good concealment and as a tank destroyer to have good mobility, but this has very nice mobility indeed, and as you can see, it completely outshadows the TL7 Black, which is worst in every regard. With the AAT60, you have the best top forward and top reverse speed in this comparison, and you have a very similar or even a slightly better power to weight around the Kampfpanzer 50T, which is a medium tank. The only thing that beats this tank is the Kunze-Panzer, which has a power to weight of 21.79, and it does have a siege mode, meaning you can go into the siege mode, get better gun depression, gun handling, and accuracy, I believe, at the expense of your mobility. But when this thing's in mobility mode or driving mode, it goes 65 kilometers an hour forwards, 23 in reverse, so the AAT60 is still better than it in that regard. However, the Kunze-Panzer does have a much better hold traverse and turret traverse. The only real downside to the AAT60 in terms of the mobility is this turret traverse at 26 degrees a second, but with gun handling skills that does boost up. As you can see, mine's gone from 26 to 28 degrees a second, but it does mean that if things are trying to circle you, you just have to make sure you're turning your hull and turret at the same time to be able to catch up and or try and give as much lead as possible in those kinds of ranges, and you're free aiming rather than auto aiming because your turret is quite slow. So pretty good news there in terms of the mobility for the AAT60. Fantastic, best in class top forward and reverse speed, and decent power to weight and hold traverse. It's only that turret traverse which is a downside. Next, we're going to have a look at the guns of these vehicles. So the AAT60 has a 105mm gun, the same as the Kunze-Panzer and the Kampfpanzer 50T, and the TL7 Black has this 120mm gun with 4 shots capable of dealing 1440 damage in 6 seconds, because it has a 2-second interclip reload, so bear that in mind. But not all 105mm guns come in the same. The AAT60 has a 105mm with 420 alpha damage on its standard APCR and premium heat rounds. Kunze-Panzer has a 105, that's typical 390 alpha damage and 480 with the HE rounds. And the Kampfpanzer 50T has a 105mm gun, but it has the worst in this comparison alpha damage at 320 with 420 on its HE rounds. In terms of the AAT60's 105mm gun, standard rounds go 1450 meters a second, which is very nice indeed. Very good for sniping at mid to long ranges, but you will lose penetration over distance, which is when you want to use your heat rounds. And in this case, they have 1050 meters a second shell velocity, so not fantastic. Give a little bit more lead than you would with your standard rounds, and the shell velocity on the HE round is 900. In terms of your penetration with the AAT60, 251, which is very disappointing indeed, especially for a tank destroyer. You are miles off of the Kunstpanzer and the Kampfpanzer 50T, which have 268mm of standard pen, and you are 1mm worse than the TL7 Black, which has 252mm of penetration. When you want to have that penetration, you use those heat rounds. It jumps up to 325mm, which is the best in this comparison, but not by an awful lot. And for a Tier 9 tank destroyer, you'll be expecting higher values than this. This can contest the fronts of super heavy tanks, but you still have to aim for those weak spots like the turret cheeks on an E100 or a mouse or a lower plate. You can't just auto aim and shoot with these kinds of penetration, and if you're a sort of really competitive player, you're definitely going to have to want to carry quite a fair few heat rounds and be willing to fire them. And with no silver bonus, you definitely won't be making silver in this tank, especially if you're missing your premium rounds as well. Lastly, in terms of your HE, 53mm of penetration, which is the joint worst with the two other medium tanks. The TL7 Black has high penetration HE with 105mm of penetration, but you have enough ammunition, as we're going to come on to in just a second. You have 63 rounds, so you have more than enough to carry plenty of premium and some HE and quite a lot of standard as well, depending on your playstyle. But yeah, pretty good news for the gun in terms of the alpha damages, which are the best in this comparison. Decent enough shell velocity. It's just the penetration on your standard rounds which is the major drawback, and you could do with a little bit more on the heat rounds, but you do have this higher alpha damage, and as we're going to come on to, that does make it have a very high DPM as well. So now we're going to look at the gun handling and DPM of these vehicles. So 1.7 second aim time on the AAT60. This is the best in this comparison, and remember the Kunstpanzer does have that siege mode where it enters to get the best it can in terms of aim time and accuracy. You still have the best aim time, which is great news. Much better, a whole second better than the TL7 Black, which is the other premium Tier 9 tank destroyer in this comparison. In terms of your accuracy, 0.39, which isn't the worst in the world considering the TL7 Black has 0.4 and a lot less, 60 I should say, less alpha damage than the AAT60, so yeah, that's not a bad trade-off. The Kunstpanzer does have the best aim time if it's in its siege mode, so that's why I've coloured the Kampfpanzer 50T in light green, because it's kind of joint best really, 0.33. However, the AAT60 you can get down to a respectable level if you do use quite a lot of gun handling skills with your commander and your equipment setup. In terms of the AAT60's rate of fire, it's got a 6.52 rate of fire, which is the joint best in this comparison with the Kampfpanzer 50T. It just so happens you have a whole 100 more alpha damage, which gives you a reload of that 9.2 seconds for a DPM of 2,738, which, as you can see, absolutely blows the competition out of the water. The autoloader, the TL7 Black, right there at 1,879, and is even better than the Kunstpanzer and Kampfpanzer 50T. So very nice DPM indeed on this vehicle with that higher alpha damage and still pretty good shell velocity. You can make that penetration work for that fantastic DPM. In terms of capacity, 63 like we have discussed, which is the best in this comparison. You kind of have the joint best gun depression, but if it's in its siege mode, the Kunstpanzer can get up to 15 degrees of depression, which will put it outright leader. But you have 10 degrees, which is joint with the TL7 and better than the Kampfpanzer 50T's 8 degrees. Gun elevation, you have the joint worst with the TL7 Black at 15 degrees, but it's more than enough for most scenarios. The best goes to the Kunstpanzer in its siege modes of 20 degrees of elevation, and the Kampfpanzer 50T 3 behind that at 17 degrees of gun elevation. So pretty good news there for the AAT60. Great aim time and accuracy you can get down to a respectable level, and when it's a respectable level with 420 alpha damage or 540 with the HE and that 2738 DPM, you can really put in some good work with the AAT60. So we're now going to have a look at my equipment and commander setup, see what that's done to the stats of this vehicle, then we're going to talk about the armor, then get stuck into the 3 gameplays for today's video. So in terms of my equipment, I'm running advanced optics, I'm running the advanced concealment and the advanced loader, and in terms of my commander, sixth sense, born leader, rapid loading, camouflage expertise, silent driving, muffled shot, I'm running situational awareness, steady aim and snapshots. So in terms of my equipment, I'm running the optics and I'm running the concealment to further boost both of those aspects, and of course the loader to help the DPM. And with my commander, sixth sense and born leader is standard, rapid loading to help the reload speed by 10%. Then I'm running 3 concealment perks combined with the situational awareness to that 6% increase to the max view range, then 2 gun handling perks, and I find this works really well for a very nice sneaky setup. You could invest a little bit less in the concealment and more in the gun handling, and you might find that better for close quarter combat or sort of more urban maps. But if you run that same setup, you'll be looking at a view range 486 meters, which has gone up dramatically, and that's more than enough combined with my now still concealment of 258 meters to outspot many different opponents. Turret reverse, because the gun handling skill has gone up to 28 degrees a second, and this would go up even higher if you ran more gun handling and maybe less concealment perks. And in terms of the gun handling and DPM, I've now got a 1.57 second aim time with a 0.32 accuracy, so very nice indeed. Rate of fire 8.94, which means I now reload in 6.71 seconds, and my DPM's gone from a great 2,738 to 3,755, which makes this thing extremely dangerous on the battlefield. When other tanks get caught out in front of it, it can become very deadly indeed. So we're now going to have a look at the armor of the AAT60, and we're not going to go into the armor view. I'm just going to put up some screenshots here whilst we're in Excel and talk about the points of interest with the armor of the AAT60. As you can see from this overview, it's got some pretty decent armor on the upper hull, front of the turret, and also sort of the welds for the turret ring, and also the weld between the upper plate and the lower plate of this vehicle. So we're going to start off with the strongest point, which is this 279mm section, which is slightly above the weld between the upper plate and lower plate, and this is the strongest part of the armor on this vehicle. And if you hit this at an angle, you're definitely going to be ricocheting. Usually people that auto aim can hit the front of this vehicle and just bounce off the upper plate anyway. The next piece of the armor I want to point out to you is these 260mm sections to the left and right of the gun. They are quite small to hit, as is the whole of the front of this turret, but these 2 sections here, they're slightly sloped upwards to the sort of left and to the right, and if this tank's using its gun depression, these do become more effective. So you're going to need sort of tier 9-10 penetration to go through these at an angle. You might even need sort of tier 9-10 premium penetration, and it's quite a small target anyway, and it's very good for bullying lower tiered targets. The next sections we're going to have a look at are these 245mm sections, so these are just to the left and right of the last 2 sections. Again, these are sort of sloped upwards, downwards, and at an angle when this thing's using its gun depression. Hit these sections, you're going to be ricocheting off them, especially if you're a lower tier target, but usually tier 9-10 premium rounds will sort of butcher this tank, and not every tank is going to be looking at it directly like you're looking at it in the gun, depending on your elevation to the AAT60. So the next sections we're going to be looking at are these 220mm sections. This top part of the lower plate, which is a major bait when this tank's coming around a corner. People shoot either a little bit too high, or their shot goes high by accident, hits this part at an angle and ricochets. That can become quite good for the AAT60, so try and avoid shooting there. The next section, 200mm, the turret ring which protrudes from the left and right of this turret and around the mantlet. Stronger than you would think to the side of this little protrusion here to the left and right of this turret, so lower tiered targets will struggle, maybe tier 7, 8 tanks, to penetrate this part as well, so that can be something to watch out for. Just hit the sides of the turret I should say, and you're going to go through. That's 90mm of armour. The next section we're going to be having a look at is this 160mm section here on the middle of the upper plate, or the lower middle I should say, and also the cupola, which is 160mm. And if you're on a leaden playing field you can hit this, but when this thing's using the full extent of its gun depression you can't even hit that. Your best shot then is to either try and go underneath the gun or just pen the left and right premium, or the protrusion of the turret ring to the left and to the right if you have enough penetration to do so. But yeah, the cupola, very hard to hit when you're below this tank, almost impossible, but there is a flat roof deck, which we'll have a look later on, that you can overmatch with a certain caliber gun. Next, 150mm is this weird zigzaggy part on the upper plate, and at a 45 or 40 to 45 degree angle this can become either an auto ricochet or a ricochet, and it can bounce quite a few rounds, which can become very helpful indeed. But the biggest part of the 150mm section here is the whole side of the left of this vehicle as you're looking directly at the AAT60. This makes it extremely good at side scraping unless people are shooting at the protrusion from your turret ring or they're trying to overmatch the engine deck, which we'll have a little look at in just a bit. But a very strong side to the left, and this is where you want to side scrape around a corner like this if you're playing the AAT60, as the lower part behind the tracks and also the whole of the side, the right hand side as you're looking at this vehicle, is only 80mm of side armor, so very unique there for this vehicle. We're now going to have a look at this 131mm section, and if this tank's raising its gun you can shoot this and you should be able to go through. However, when it's using its gun depression you won't see this section. Next we're going to have a look at this 120mm section, which is the outer edges of the upper plate to the left and right, and also the lower plate. So the lower plate's going to be a weak spot, but depending on what you're shooting at on the AAT60, if this thing's coming around a corner at 40 sort of degrees and you're shooting the outer edges of the left hand side, you're going to ricochet. If you shoot the 120mm section closest to you, that's going to be a weaker point and you're going to be able to go through as it's slightly flatter towards you at that angle. Next, 100mm, and it is this section here to the left and right of the upper plate, sloping up towards the protrusion of the turret ring. If this thing's coming around a corner you can go through the side of this vehicle 90, or even this section here, which is 100mm. The next section we're looking at is 90mm, and that is the turret sides. Very large silhouette from the side to hit, however from the front you won't be able to see these sections at all. Next is these 80mm sections of side armour, so the lower part of the left hand side as you're looking at this tank, but the whole of the right hand side is 80mm, whereas the other side's 150mm, so this can side scope very, very well indeed, unless people are shooting at your engine deck, in which they can overmatch, and I'll tell you the caliber in just a second of the overmatchable section of this tank. 50mm of rear armour, so susceptible to HE damage there. You have 35mm of roof deck armour, and this is overmatchable if you are able to see it. You won't see this when it's using its gun depression, but when you're above it you can overmatch this section, and we'll just find out what gun caliber you need to overmatch it. It'll be 35 times 3 plus 1mm. You need a 106mm caliber gun or higher, so 120mm caliber guns will overmatch, 105s won't. That's something to know if you are kind of above this vehicle and you want to shoot and you overmatch it with a 106 or higher every single time. And the engine deck that I was talking about is this raised section here. When this thing's side scraping from either angle, you can try and shoot this if you have enough of a shot on it, and to overmatch it'll be 25 times 3 plus 1, so 76mm caliber gun or hard overmatch this section, and that will be the part to shoot if you don't have a higher caliber gun or enough penetration to go through the side of the lower plate and this thing is side scraping, you can try and overmatch the engine deck as it does protrude out. But yeah, overall quite a strong vehicle, pretty good at side scraping. Pretty nice turret armor with almost impossible to hit cupola unless you are kind of looking directly at it. Very narrow target from the front. The protrusions of the turret ring can be weak spots, which can be annoying if you're side scraping on a ridge line, but for the most part the upper plate even bounces and the upper part of the lower plate can as well. Get to the sides and rear, and yeah, and it's very easy to take this thing out, and it does have a very slow turret traverse, so yeah, you can shoot those 90mm sides of this tank. But that's it for talking about the armour of the AAT60. We're now going to head into the first of 3 gameplays. So now we are into the first gameplay of today's video, and we are here on Dukla Pass in a standard battle in the AAT60, and this is the first glimpse you can see of how quick this vehicle is. As you can see, we're leading the charge. It's a very mobile tank destroyer, and it does play a variety of roles on the battlefield, which is why I think I really enjoy this vehicle. You can play a kind of medium style gameplay with this mobility. You can play ridgeline, medium tank / sort of heavy tank gameplay with the armor on the turret and also the very narrow section people have to shoot at you, and against sort of lower tiered opponents that can become almost bully like when you're on a ridgeline. You have excellent DPM to get you out of tough situations, fantastic concealment if you do invest in a concealment build with your equipment and commander setup, and that ability to spot for yourself, play a little bit of a sort of scouting tank destroyer / light tank role. You can sit back and it's got nice shell velocity in your standard rounds, plenty of ammunition and decent enough penetration to be a typical kind of tank destroyer, and it just is very flexible on the battlefield, and you can get to where you need to be with the mobility. And yeah, it's just a fantastic all-round vehicle, very strong indeed. I wouldn't say it's OP because of the penetration issues, and if you're going to be playing this sort of auto-locking everything and not aiming at weak spots, you're going to have a bad time. And if you give people the side of this vehicle, you can get taken out very quickly indeed. But you can do some outrageous things with the concealment, and if you invest in the view range, you can get forward and spot like we're trying to do here on Dukla Pass. We did get a spot on that AMX50 120. Then you can slap someone really hard with this gun, waiting for the tracks there on the AMX50 120. And you're reloaded so quickly with this fantastic DPM. And yeah, I've been having some really fun games. Only a couple of really bad games in about 15 to 20 games in the AAT60, or that's what at least it's felt like. I haven't actually checked how many I've played. And yeah, I'm really enjoying this vehicle. Didn't take me too long to get these 3 gameplays, which I feel are sort of good representations of what you can achieve in this tank. And it's felt very consistent over the sort of few hours that I was playing earlier, as we're sniping on this Centurion AVRE, who does have magical armor with that sort of plow bit on the front of that tank. But we managed to get a shot through the side there. I noticed that he got shot again, so went for a blind shot. He reappeared and he managed to bounce again, and he's living a bit of a charmed life. But yeah, a relatively slow start for this kind of DPM. However, you don't want to rush into a position, get yourself spotted, taken out very quickly. You want to try and play a little bit cautiously at the start. Get into an advantageous position with your mobility, try and ambush someone, get a bit of vision, and then try and fall back when you have teammates, and now you can push forward like we're doing here. A very fortunate shot there on that Italian tank destroyer. It's not very accurate on the move, especially with my setup. It doesn't have great dispersion while moving, which is why it's not the best on the move. But I found that once you're in a position, aim time's so good that accuracy and the sort of accuracy during dispersion and movement didn't hold me back, and I'd rather invest in the concealment factor like we did with my commander and equipment setup. So we've advanced here on Dukla Pass into this sort of southeastern location where all of the enemy tanks are. It very often happens on this map, the brawling location. We've cleared out the north and the northeast, and now we're coming down the sort of 890 line at all of these tanks, and we're just going to be able now to put this gun to work at this kind of range, mid-range. You don't even have to fully aim, and this gun feels quite accurate. The turret traverse, as you can see, is quite slow, so that can catch you out if people are trying to get through you. But if you know where to shoot tanks, you can make the standard penetration work, even though it isn't fantastic at all. It will struggle frontally against super heavy tanks and tanks that have a lot of sort of spaced armour, and the heat, you do have to make that work against the flatter armour and against tanks that don't have the spaced armour, and then you were able to contest the super heavies by going for sort of turret cheeks, lower plates, that kind of thing. So it didn't feel like it held me back too much. I went for the tracks there of that CC1 Mark 1, however we do miss, which means that we unfortunately do take a bit of damage. Just playing this kind of peekaboo game here on this ridge. He fires, which means I feel like I'm going to go up and hopefully get either a tracking shot or a killing blow into this tank. He fires again, which allows me to advance over another ridgeline, and we can poke forward using the great 10 degrees of gun depression with the AAT60 to take out that CC1 Mark 1. And then in very quick succession we can take out another tank there in the T10, and now we can go after this Swedish tier 10 heavy tank with our DPM. He is fighting our friend. We're listening out for his shells. I believe he's fired all of them now, and make a bit of a misplay there by auto-aiming. At this distance you should still be able to hit, and again I auto-aim and it just hits a very steep angle and bounces. That's completely on me. If you aim like I'm doing here, then there's absolutely no problem with the accuracy of this vehicle. And you can see, even though we missed those two shots, he's now on 9 hit points, and he subsequently gets taken out by the WZ-111-14. So yeah, you have enough DPM sometimes to cover your mistakes in this vehicle, and if you can make use of this DPM, it's very nasty indeed, and you can absolutely shred. And when you're on a ridgeline, it can be very frustrating for your opponents to be able to find a place to shoot this tank, because the turret is so narrow and you're going backwards and forwards, side to side on a ridgeline. You become a very hard target to hit. Unfortunately, we gave the side of our turret there to the Object 257, but I was kind of willing to do that to try and get some damage into this Progetto 66. We're going to try and finish off this Object 257, but he's playing well, coming around peekabooing, knowing when I'm going after the Progetto 66. But now that 257 gets taken out by the Conqueror gun carriage, we can come around, make this Progetto 66 move. We put one in and manage to finish him off, and that's it for our first game there on Dukla Pass in the AAT60. We have 4 kills, 5.4k direct damage, 1668 assistance, and 4 kills, 2000 XP there. That's only a first class, showing you people are playing this very, very well. And to show how good it is at kind of all round potential, 1290 blocked. 10,000 silver profit without, because we fired some premium, and 48,000 profit silver with a premium account. So yeah, it's doable. It's one of those tanks that you play because you enjoy it. So that's it for the first game. We're now going to head on into the second game of today's video. Now we are on Murovanka in the second gameplay of today's video, and we're here with the AAT60 in the northern spawn, and we're going to head into a sort of sniping position on these hills in front of us down the 1-2-3 line to begin this battle. See if we can use our view range, which we have pushed up, and our fantastic concealment to get some spotting for ourselves. Just put some sniping fire to start this battle. You could basically take this tank anywhere on this map, which is a testament to how flexible it is. It has the mobility and the gun depression and the DPM to be able to go around to the 890 line and play more like a medium tank and push around that flank, or you could sit back a little bit, use the concealment, snipe, and then you could go in and use the gun depression down this side as well. So yeah, a very flexible tank. If you like medium tanks and tank destroyers and tanks that have speed combined with very nice DPM, then yeah, you're going to really, really enjoy this vehicle. We get a nice shot there on the T54E1. You can see that when you do move the turret and move the tank, there is quite a lot of bloom on the reticle, but once you sort of stop, the aim time's so good, it kind of goes down so quickly that even kind of 3/4 half aim shots sometimes do fly quite well with this tank. And yeah, like I said in the first gameplay, it's worth it for that trade-off for your view range increase and your still concealment decrease to make you as sort of good a spotter and as invisible on the battlefield as possible. And now we're just trying to scope for shots. There's a shot there on the Falcon T92 which I felt like it was worth popping up a little bit extra to get a shot into him, because any kind of light tank or anyone that has good concealment and vision is able to do a decent job. And if we get him taken out at the start of this battle or put him on a one shot, then he's going to be less likely to influence the rest of the battle. Now just rocking backwards, going sideways and forwards, just because we are being sort of targeted by the artillery, and there are two on either team, so definitely don't want to take an artillery shell to the top of this tank. As you saw when we're looking through the armour, you have 25 and 35mm plates on the engine deck and on the roof of the turret, so that's going to be overmatched, and yeah, you're going to take a lot of damage even from lower tiered artillery. And yeah, we're just trying to pick shots as and when. We're up to 1,234 damage, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, that's really satisfying, and 362 assistance. We notice there is this heavy Object 705 fighting our 705, so we come round. I forgot there that was firing heat, so we didn't go through the side armour of the 705, but we're going to try our luck again, and he does pull back and angle his upper plate there, and we don't manage to get another one into him. So you see my setup at the bottom: large med, large repair kit, and the combat rations to help push that DPM up, view range up, gun handling, everything about the vehicle. And I carry a nice selection of ammunition, not too many HE rounds. Sometimes I've carried up to sort of 10, but I find that I rarely use them, and I'd rather have the extra heat and the APCR rounds to choose as and when throughout the battle, because you do hold a lot of ammunition at 63 rounds per battle. So yeah, you have plenty of ammunition to choose from, and a good selection of ammunition, and yeah, it just adds to how good this tank is at being a very good all-round vehicle. The 705 is pushing again, so we pop round, we get one into him, we roll there for what looks like slightly above average. I find that you kind of do roll slightly lower than you would expect from a tank that has 420 alpha damage. I'm kind of rolling closer to 400 more often than not, is what it feels like, but you do have that capacity to have those very nice high rolls nearing sort of 500 damage, and yeah, that can really chunk your opponents down, especially when you have a reload that I now have of 6.71 seconds. So we're up by 2 tanks, I should say, in this game, which means that it's time for me to advance. I've kept my 1650 hit points intact. We've got some nice spotting, a little bit of damage, unblocked a bit, and now we can come around here, fire a very unnecessary heat round into the Iron Rain, but I'm keeping them loaded just for the moment. I wasn't too worried about the silver, just wanted to get my second shell in there. We managed to, with the great DPM, get 2 shells as that Iron Rain is falling back. We've still got the heat rounds loaded, probably unnecessary at this point, but it's relatively close, so yeah, why not? I'm not too bothered by the silver, and at this range it wouldn't matter what round you're firing, I would have been able to penetrate that round there on the CC1 Mark 1. And we have another round here for this Dragon, and you can see it reloads so quickly, and we managed to put another round into that Dragon, really making him think twice about coming into this ridgeline with us. And then we have the presence of mind to be able to switch to APCR to come and engage the rest of these tanks. You've got enough gun depression to use these ridge lines. We're going to pop over a very cheeky little auto aim there on that Iron Rain, taking the Iron Rain down, and it didn't take long for us to jump up to 3.3k direct. There's 5 enemies left, so we're going to be trying to push as aggressively as possible here. Stop, try and get a shot in on that Dragon. Nice snapshot there. You can see when you stop, then the aim time's so good that it really does feel quite accurate. If you just let it that split second aim in, within sort of just over a second you're aimed in and you're ready to go again, and it's definitely worth it for that improvement to the concealment. So we come over here, auto aim so lazily on the Pantera, and it just shows that you really shouldn't auto aim, because you're going to find quite a lot of auto ricochet angles in this game. So we get a shot there, actually aim it into the side of the Pantera, and then we can come round, stop, aim in, get a nice snapshot there in on the CC1 Mark II, the Tier 9 Italian auto-loading tank, and now we can come forward, and when the artillery spotted, there's only going to be one main target for me for the moment, and I'm not even getting spotted at 254 meters by this M40 M43 because of the great steel concealment and the fact that we've chosen to boost it up. The M40-43 gets unspotted, but we come forward again and we don't even get spotted even closer, just sort of shy of 200 meters there, and we're able to sneak up on our opponents. And when we get to the side of these tanks, there's only one way that it's going to go in my favour because of the DPM, so the Italian tank can only turn its turret a small way to the left and right, and we're just going to use the mobility to come round, put a shot in on the move, get a bit of ramming damage, track him in place, get some tracking damage, and finish this game off with a nice tally there in the AAT60. 4 kills, 6.1k direct damage, 1809 assistance. We also get a high caliber there, first class, 1950 basic speed, top of the team, and we do lose a little bit of silver because we fired quite unnecessary heat rounds there, but with a premium account you're making a small profit every battle, and 930 block just to show it's a very good all-round vehicle again. So that's it for the second gameplay. Now I'm going to jump into the third and final gameplay of today's video. So now we're into the third and final game of today's video, and we are here on Westfield in a team destruction battle. We spawned in the southwestern corner and we're going to make our way over the eastern side of the map and try and get some vision out towards the sort of viaduct and into the central area and the little town of this map. I accidentally drive a little bit too far to the left, considering going into the centre of the map, but I felt like we'll be a bit more protected going to the eastern side using the ridge line up on this hill here, and then we can get some crossfire towards the viaduct and also into the town area like I was just speaking about at the start of this video. So we managed to change our mind a little bit there whilst we're driving, and we still managed to arrive in position pretty much before anyone else. We're up here in K6. We're going to try and spot over this ridge towards the north of this map and then hopefully get some shots at anyone crossing that gap where we were just looking, or anyone that makes their way into the centre of this map. And just setting up here for the moment, boosting our view range actively with the combat rations, and this Centurion Action 10 appears. We get a lovely shot into the rear of that tank, and because he's behind a building we don't get spotted. We might not get spotted anyway if he had direct line of sight with his turret, but we'll never know. Roll pretty high there for 484. In the last game I was talking about it feels like you're always kind of rolling lower than the 420 alpha damage, but we get a nice high roll there, and you can see it really does feel like you're slapping your opponents quite hard, and the reload's so good. I try and knock down this building, but it looks like it's one of the ones that isn't destructible, and we managed to get vision on this Centauro 45T. He's reversing, but we're going to keep tabs on where we think he's going and have a blind fire there. You have enough ammunition to be able to do multiple blind fires with this vehicle, and we do get a lovely shot there into that Centauro 45T, and we haven't really spotted anyone else, so we're going to just advance a little bit further, see if there's anyone hiding at the top of this viaduct bridge, and maybe we'll be able to put our gun to work here. Just going ridge to ridge in this vehicle down this side. We have enough mobility, enough concealment to feel pretty confident, and I have enough confidence in the concealment of this vehicle and how I've set it up to be able to fire at this 263. He angles just enough so we don't penetrate him, but we don't get spotted even by that T30 there who we've spotted straight in front of us, and we get a nice shot there in that 263. We're in the middle of this field and we're just putting supporting fire to our medium tank below us, who looks like he spotted all of those tanks. I felt so confident in the concealment I could just sit in the middle of that road. Unless that T30 popped round, he would have had a good chance of spotting us, but I felt confident enough just to sit there, and yeah, I don't feel that confident too often, especially in tanks that haven't got any sidearm. I'm not going to bounce a T30 round, so it just goes to show how good the concealment is. And when you combine it with, you know, some pretty decent armour all around this vehicle, especially on the turret and the mobility of this tank, yeah, it really does become very powerful. And that DPM, if you have the opportunity to use it, you really do rack up the damage very, very quickly indeed. We haven't fired an awful lot of rounds, but 2.6k damage already in the first sort of 3.5 minutes of this battle, and again 259 meters away from this E100. He can't spot us through all of this foliage here. We track him in place, but we're going to go for a shot there on his lower plate. I think we just hit the ridge line. We didn't check where the ridge was, but we can get another shot as he's turning around because the DPM is so good with this vehicle, and I can sit pretty comfortably here knowing I'm not going to get spotted unless things get sort of around sort of 250 to 230 meters and I'm not behind any trees. So we get spotted there by that T30 and we fall back pretty quickly with a nice reverse speed of 24 kilometers an hour back behind the ridge, get re-stealthed, and then we can come up here, go into the bushes again, line ourselves up and hopefully get some ambush shots off on any of these two tanks. I'm considering crossing this gap when it's safe to do so, but I don't know who's on the other side of this bridge for the enemy team yet, unless there's anyone hiding there. So we're just going to lie in this position and get any kind of supporting fire we can. E100 blast the Centurion 45T back to the garage, and now we can get a nice show on this T30. We wait for him to fire. I'm loading the heat very unnecessarily again for that E100, but against the T30 I'm not needing it. However, it will come in handy when we're shooting the upper plate of the T30, and we can just put round after round, and now we're down to sort of below 240, down to sort of 220 meters to see if we get spotted. Nope. The concealment is so good with this vehicle and the DPM so high, we've only taken out that full health T30. Now we have, let's see if we have enough time or our DPM's good enough to take out this E100. He doesn't know who's spotted him, he puts his gun up in the air and we take him out and he's back to the garage. Then we load back our APCR for the rest of the game, and of course firing that many heat is unnecessary. You really don't need to do it, but against super heavies I like to give myself all of the chance in the world of penetrating, and I'm just trying to get some good gameplay obviously for today's video, but a little bit unnecessary there against the T30, but against the E100, because of the poor standard pen, it's more sense to actually load the heat if you don't mind occasionally losing a little bit of silver in your battles. We fire at the E100 there and aim really poorly, should have just gone in for the engine deck. We go another one now into the side. We're getting targeted by the artillery. We have just gone forward in front of loads of tanks, but I knew that if I was the first one there, I'm going to get all of this spotting and try and get as much of this damage and assistance for myself. We saved our hit points and we have that mobility to be the ones going forward. The Centurion 7-1's given up. He's given up in the graveyard, which is, yeah, that's a poem in itself there. And now we're going to try and get some shots in on this T92. We're trying to wiggle as much as possible because the artillery is tracking us, and there we get a nice end to that battle with a little bit more damage but a hell of a lot more spotting because we race forward with the mobility. And yeah, we make a profit with or without a premium account there. Again, 2057 XP is, or base XP is only a first class. 3 kills, 6.6k direct damage, 3.3k assistance, and yeah, a good indication of how overall powerful this tank is. If you know to shoot for your weak spots, if you know some good positions, you can go ridgeline, you can play medium tank, you can play a light tank role, a typical tank destroyer role, and yeah, on ridgelines you're very, very good. You have enough armor to keep you in the battle more often than not. In the first 2 gameplays of today's video, you saw me block quite a bit of damage in those first 2 games. And then on open maps, you can use your view range and use the vision mechanics to outspot your opponents and take them out that way. And I really enjoy it. It's quite a steep price, but for the collectors, it's definitely going to be worth it. If you're a really new player and you're wanting something with just better penetration, something like a tech tree, grind your way up toward like the T110E4, something like that, it'd be a much, much easier kind of start for you. And if you were going for a premium tank, choose something with a bit better penetration if you're looking for a tier 9 premium. But that's it for today's video, today's review of the AAT60. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Sorry I've been away for such a long time. A video will come out explaining why that is in just a little bit, but hopefully I'm back and making videos semi-regularly again. So thank you all so much for your patience and support, and until next time, I'll see you on the battlefield, and bye for now.